been chosen.
This is more of a research video. There's a fascinating website called Astrological, and I came across it maybe about 8 or 7 years ago. I like it because the data displayed is very clean and well organized. As I record this video, you see that Venus and Mars are in conjunction. It is also nearly noon in New York City where this chart takes place, making the Sun conjunct to midheaven. And I think this conjunction of Mars and Venus is appropriate because the topic is about twin flames. You can find a lot of content people create concerning this topic of opposite gender perfect matches. I suppose if the concept is real, it could even be same gender perfect matches. I don't know, but the important thing to know up front about this topic and how I became exposed to it is I have had, and even still to this day, have quite a bit of skepticism about the actual realness of the phenomena. I would say even beyond skepticism, really more in the realm of just disbelief. I could see how the information is used to play to people's emotions, to benefit tarot card readers and others motivated for financial gain. So I looked at the patterns in astrology to see if that was yet another window to use the symbolic information of this reality to understand the world better, and a reason why spiritual dichotomies appear to have an existence. So now I'll share with you how synchronous events have challenged my belief system, skepticism, forced me to consider the twin flame phenomena, and perhaps even offers a launchpad for further investigation by others with more time and resources. So getting to the point, maybe about 7 or 8 years ago, there was a young lady I encountered when I worked my first day of a specific job opportunity. Looking back on everything, I sometimes wondered if that job opportunity was contrived in a way created for me by an authority I've not met. I say that because I got the opportunity in about 1 out of 13 odds, and I wasn't sure if I was really the best person. Coincidentally, a relative who had a military background claimed the decision was political and that there are other forces at work. Bear in mind, I did not really communicate with this relative very often, so this came as a surprise. But this was the lucky setting where I met this young lady. Now, I'm not really the sentimental type, but I immediately viewed this person who seemed to have had a rather plain appearance and a bit more of a muted, passive personality as being attractive to a rather intimidating degree, an individual who stood out from any other girl I had seen up until that point. We were only co-workers and acquaintances for a rather short time. We then eventually went our own ways. There's a longer story of numerous other possibly synchronous events that were potential clues to me that this person was separate from the others, but the focus of this video is more on the astrological aspect. So a few years later, I was browsing this Astro theme website, and I saw some interesting options of using birth charts. Because of a growing interest in astrology, I did manage to acquire some birth details from this person, and that was after I'd come across this particular website. So I took our stated birth information, and mind you, later I learned that my own birth certificate information is possibly incorrect based on time, but the particular time my eyes were shown in this lifetime resulted in a very interesting result once I created a calculation with this other person's birth chart. Initially, I went to the different affinities. So on this website, you can calculate your love affinity, your friendship affinity, and your professional affinity. So I did that. So for the affinities calculation, there's a page where you basically enter the birth chart information for saved birth charts, and then you combine it. So I'll show you the result of combining random birth charts, a crypto founder, Richard Hart, and a friend of a friend there. Making this random combination between the two, you get a love affinity rating of 23%. Pretty much every chart combination I had tried would yield a specific percentage. This is perhaps the lowest I've seen, but it ranges from this all the way up into the high 80s for the vast majority of these charts. To give an example of a reading for this percent, perhaps it would be better to reconsider your relationship, which is very unlikely to last because the unpleasant moments may predominate over the nice ones as time goes by. Enjoy the present without making too many plans for the future. If the relationship demands excessive energy and adjusting, don't get too upset. A great deal of courage is needed if you are to travel a long distance together. It is more unlikely that your relationship is successful, although it is not an unavoidable fate. It is up to you to decide without dramatizing things. Okay, so just cutting to the chase, these two individuals, at least according to their website, are not astrologically compatible in the romantic sense. So I'll now show you the result of combining my stated birth time, birth chart, with this other person who I perceived could potentially be a twin flame. This is the result, 100%. You are enjoying an exceptionally smooth relationship, whatever the situation may be. Even though misunderstandings crop up, you easily manage to create a deep harmony. It does not imply that communication between you is particularly intense or special, but it means that for both of you, love requires no effort. Your compatibility index is remarkable and quite exceptional. Your relationship is extremely harmonious to the extent that superlatives are unable to express its essence. So I saw this and thought, well, that's interesting. I never really hit it off with this person. So then I did a friendship compatibility. Result 100%. Your personalities get along so perfectly well that it's most likely that you instinctively take great pleasure in starting a dialogue and striking up a friendship. Never restrain yourselves and be spontaneous and lively because your relationship is exceptionally easy and harmonious. The friendship tie which you weave will certainly be strong, fulfilling, and long-lasting. To round it out, I went ahead and did the social and professional affinity. The unsurprising result, 100%. Your personalities get along so perfectly well that it is most likely that your professional collaboration is exceptionally good. You enjoy talking and working together, including on difficult projects which require many sustained efforts. Indeed, nothing, or almost nothing, will have the power to slow down the efficiency of your cooperation. Do not hesitate to become partners and launch new products together because your energies are complementary and there is every chance that you will both experience success and the pleasure to communicate together in all circumstances. So I saw these 300% for each of these categories and was like, okay, so I assume there's something about the timing of our births that result in a specific range of overlapped planetary conjunctions that can cause this 100% phenomena. Keep in mind, the reason why I acquired this person's birth information was because I started to speculate about the whole twin flame concept, and this was literally the only person that I encountered in my entire life that I considered could possibly be a twin flame. No, I did not see myself in the person. I just had enough personal insight to realize that I seem to have exaggerated, maybe disproportionate feeling around someone who I perceive to be rather plain appearing, with a very nice, gentle, but plain personality. So I thought these hundreds were interesting, but it wasn't to the point to really challenge me. But now I'll show you what had challenged me. I went to this interactive composite chart and mid-space time chart feature. I'll talk to you about the interactive composite chart. So you go to the composite chart page and you enter the birth information for specific saved profiles. We'll use the Richard Hart D example again. So you go to merge the charts. What happens is you'll receive a resulting single chart. This chart represents the average of positions of the planets between both parties. So looking at the moon, let's say Richard had a moon in Aries, D had a moon in Leo. Fusing the chart will create an average of positions, drawing the moon up here to Gemini. So this occurs for each of the planetary positions until you get this resultant chart. So I wanted to know that if I fused my chart with this potential twin flame, would I be able to derive specific information that was like a personal message to myself? Would I be able to observe specific patterns that could legitimize the concept of twin flame and be potentially reproducible in the charts of other twin flames? So in this random chart, I'll show you what I did in my own personal chart comparison. So here, highlighted each of these, hit redraw. When you do that, a specific glyph becomes available called Chiron. Chiron appears to be a key, so to myself I symbolically associated it with being the key to the chart. When you press on this glyph, you get a reading for its specific degree, in this case in Gemini, but you also get this specific reading for the degree, which is known as the Sabian symbol. This is where things had gotten interesting for me. The Sabian symbols are symbolic degrees belonging to a branch of fatalistic astrology. Their interpretation must be regarded with utmost caution, especially given the fact that different authors give different meanings to symbolic degrees. This is the reason why they are not included in our astro theme reports. So you get like a phrase that matches the particular degree, and there's an interpretation of the phrase. So this one is, in the middle of the night, two men in uniform holding their horse by the bridle walk side by side. Nearby, three snakes crawl away. The interpretation: discreet, shrewd, and clear-sighted character endowed with extrasensory perception. Wealth and fame can be achieved in the military, sports, especially horse riding, science, or pharmaceutical research, most often thanks to the support of powerful friends. Entities and plots are easily overcome. However, there is a danger that an outstanding success is followed by a sudden ordeal and disgrace. One must be wary of people with high-pitched voice because they are most likely to have a slanderous tongue and to master the art of calumny. And again, so this is the chart combining Richard Hart and this other friend of a friend. So now I'll show you the combined chart of myself and the twin flame person. So when I combine the charts, this is what I was shown. This does appear to have a pattern that conveys a message. Here you see midheaven, which represents midday. You have the moon on one side and its counterpart, Lilith moon, on the other side. You have the North Node, which represents karmic fate for a given incarnation, nearby to the part of fortune, the glyph representing luck in a given lifetime. You have Mercury at the bottom of the chart in the center. On each side of it, you have Uranus and Neptune. On each side of those, you have Saturn and the Sun. And on each side of those, you have Mars and Venus. Each of these planets can be looked at as counterparts of the other. Mars is a counterpart of Venus, Saturn is a counterpart of the Sun, Uranus is a counterpart of Neptune. This was the particular pattern I was shown. You could also argue that perhaps Jupiter could be considered a counterpart to Saturn in place of the Sun, though there is also a very important established symbolic relationship between Saturn and the Sun. When you search the term Mercury genderless, you'll find some references. Here we see Mercury in Pisces astrology. Mercury is agile, quick, objective, genderless. Or this one, advancedastrology.com. Mercury is unemotional and genderless in astrology. And as a reminder, here's the glyph for Mercury. It looks sort of like the female symbol, but it has horns on its head. In some respects, it's very similar to the glyph for my YouTube channel. That glyph being Atmetos, the difference being it has a cross going about its face. Here's the actual channel glyph. So in short, this is a very powerful symbology. Mercury here at the center, mediating the different genders, being genderless itself. Just seeing this likely had an impact on my thinking of the nature of reality, and could have played somewhat into even the naming of my YouTube and other social media profile. And keep in mind, the birth time I was provided, at least according to a recollection of family members, is actually incorrect. The birth certificate itself is incorrect, but either through bad luck, or maybe good luck, or maybe through the intervention of a third party, a specific time was written in my birth certificate that years later, when I chose to fuse charts, would result in me seeing this particular pattern. I did create a corrected fused chart a few years later when I was informed there's discrepancy in my birth time. Essentially, the corrected chart is on its side. It doesn't look quite as good, but the basic pattern still persists. And so here's a shot of my stated birth chart. I showed you Mercury at the bottom of the previous fused chart. Here you have Atmetos, the glyph, at the very top of this chart. It was also impressed upon me the significance of the perfect conjunction of midheaven with the part of fortune. The distance between the two is merely 5 minutes. So seeing this specific pattern, the opposition of Admetos with Mercury, was a form of inspiration as well. I struggled finding an interpretation of what the part of fortune conjunct midheaven means. Essentially, I found a single source stating that it just means you have like a personal message to deliver to the world. Really, in the most exoteric sense, it could mean some additional fortune in the area of 10th house issues, which is the career, and 9th house issues, which is travel and philosophy. I looked at the Atmetos glyph in this context as symbolically representing either the way of the world falling on its head, or these being antennae with information falling into it. Moving over, another pattern here, which I don't quite know what it represents. Triangle, oval, cross, 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 going up a hill. I digress. So now I'll show you how I interpreted the Sabian symbols here. So I went ahead and selected for display all aspects. So it's an interpretation of the Sabian symbols where things go even deeper. So here's a revelation of Chiron, the key to the chart. A fox runs as fast as it can, apparently to compete with an arrow shot by an invisible hand. The interpretation: swift, shrewd, and inventive character, driven by high ideals and endowed with strong persuasion powers. A host of good ideas continuously jostle together in the mind and must be sorted out in order to discriminate between what is essential and what is incidental. Furthermore, a good common sense must be developed, and concrete objectives must be clearly identified, lest talents and skills are lost in the twists and turns of an intellect working at full throttle. So point of emphasis 1, it's a 17th degree Gemini. Second point of emphasis: mentally, I felt always as if I have been somewhat in a hurry. much like a fox running as fast as it can, to make perfect sense of events in the world around me. Much of the content I publish is simply attempts at discerning what is real versus what is fake. Much like this reading, in order to discriminate between what is essential and what is incidental. I agreed that this particular interpretation of the Sabian symbol did seem to match the essence of how I approached the world. And even reading it was challenged to consider, was the appearance of these words in this particular symbol incidental? Was the apparently incorrect time in the birth certificate incidental? Or is there a deeper reason? Does this interpretation apply only to me, or does it also apply to the alleged twin flame counterpart? So I'll read you some of the other symbols. So now let's look at Lilith and its counterpart. Lilith, first degree, Cancer. A fat dog defends its bone against two scrawny dogs, while a man hesitates to follow the woman who passes by. Selfish, lazy, and conceited character. This degree describes a freeloader who is unwilling to help one's friends. Although one is refined and subtle, these qualities are overshadowed by the will to take advantage of other people's generosity in any possible way. Life is easy, yet it is that of a sponger. Compared to the moon, which is 27 degree Gemini. Generous, cheerful, and hard-working character. One enjoys an excellent health and a happy life amid a large family and a host of friends. Success can be achieved in animal husbandry or exploitation of the land, mineral, etc., as well as in arboriculture and botany. Careers in science, philosophy, religion, and the arts are also very favored. This degree brings about fertility in all areas, including in a family with the birth of twins. If in a natal chart this degree is in conjunction with the midheaven and Jupiter, it promises honors and big wealth. With the sun, the moon, and a part of fortune, unforeseen windfalls and legacies can be expected. So you notice how these interpretations of the moon and Lilith are counterposed. This is a generous, cheerful, hardworking person. Lilith is a selfish, lazy, conceited person. Lilith is a dark moon, considered the opposite of the moon. So I recognize this pattern amongst the other patterns. Now let's look at the part of fortune. 10 degree Aries. A good-looking woman reclining in a sofa wears a negligee which seems to ready to drop from her shoulder. Gentle, pleasant, and hospitable character. One is devoted to nice deeds and charity work, but one has no willpower. One is so selfless that one may get involved in a romance just out of one's inability to say no. Therefore, there is a danger to get lost in one's desire to please others. This degree indicates that happiness comes from concealed love affairs and changes, rather than from marriage. If in the natal chart Mercury is dominant, the intellect may prevail over sensuality and may prompt to establish some sort of literary or artistic circle, which offers a nice opportunity for both genders to get together and flirt. And so this is the part of fortune for this particular fused chart, which symbolically is a twin flame merger chart. The topic of this symbol appears to be strictly romance. So I took that as being significant as well. And the symbol talks about, in essence, how to become lucky. And it is the part of fortune symbol. All right, so we now take a look at the North Node. North Node represents the goals that must be achieved during life in a karmic sense according to some traditions. Its position in house indicates in what field and effort is necessary in order to evolve. The North Node is often called the dragon's head. It's usually considered beneficial, a bit like Jupiter with the planets. The lunar nodes are fictional points and not actually heavenly bodies. They are intersections of the moon with the ecliptic. The axis of the lunar nodes move 19 degrees each year, namely a bit more than 3 minutes each day. So for this North Node symbol, 18 degrees Aries, a young student holding an open book walks in a shady wood. Through the foliage, sunbeams set his face ablaze. Interpretation: contemplative, helpful, and simple character. One revels in solitude and meditation, and one spends long hours pondering in order to understanding one's true nature and improve oneself. One readily responds to requests for help and protects the weak against the powerful. One is kept in high esteem for one's scientific knowledge about the laws and mysteries of nature. Although one prefers living in the quietness of a remote place, one may be brought under the spotlight by success and fame. So I have not really revealed all that much about myself, but I can tell you that this is essentially the type of person that I am. Very contemplative, an INFJ Myers-Briggs type that seeks to advocate for others. I seem to spend much time contemplating the laws and mysteries of nature, and I really do not want to be known. So because of how much these particular symbols seem to match my situation, I was challenged to consider the twin flame concept more seriously. In one reality, you can say coincidence theory can result in interpretation of information to find all sorts of amazing patterns and connections that actually are just incidental and mean nothing. Just a mind racing to make sense. I've looked at these data a lot. This appears to be more than a desperate attempt to make a face out of a chewed up dog bone. It seems God may use resources and environment of which we find ourselves to try to communicate specific messages, maybe to provide encouragement. Now, this is a very long video, but I'll finally get to telling you the reason why I decided to finally upload this. There's another friend I had come acquainted with years ago who also has a twin flame story. On my own, I chose to combine the chart of this friend and the potential twin flame to see if there are any similarities to the chart I showed you. I'll now show you what I found. Okay, so first I'm going to say that when you look at this person's birth chart just individually, there's an upside down star. So you see here's the head of the star, here are two arms, here are two legs of the star. I'll now show you the fusion of this person's birth chart with this potential twin flame. So fusing the chart, I looked immediately to see if there are any patterns, and I'm sure to you a pattern may stick out already. And so here you see there's yet another upside down star. Here are two arms, here's the head, here are two legs. And the head of the star appears to be pointing towards Saturn, which is squared with a few other bodies there. It's Jupiter, Sun, and Venus. But look at this. So you have the moon here, and you have Lilith there. So if you were to bisect the chart, you would bisect it through Taurus, and going down to center, you have Pluto just to the left of center, and you have the moon on one side, Lilith on the other side. And I read the Sabian symbols for each of these glyphs, and I noticed a pattern. So each of these planets are in the sign of Scorpio, which I would say the majority of the Sabian symbols for Scorpio appear to have some type of negative connotation. But look at the interpretations here. I'll start with the moon. Interpretation of first degree Scorpio symbolic degree. On top of a promontory, a man riding an elephant contemplates the sun rising over the sea. Generous, ambitious, and tolerant character, endowed with intelligence and self-confidence. Long travels, international politics, and a strong taste for exoticism bring about success and prosperity. This degree sometimes indicates artistic gifts and great fulfillment in quiet occupations, such as the cultivation of flowers or the distillation of perfumes. Okay, so just log in keywords: generous, ambitious, tolerant. Now let's look at Pluto. Interpretation of 6th degree Scorpio symbolic degree. As he tills his field with a spade, a young woman finds a diamond. This degree indicates that wealth is acquired through sheer luck. It might be an old treasure hidden in forebears or an unexpected bequest. The natal chart indicates if one is able to increase the riches granted or if one squanders them. Occupations dealing with precious stones, ores, and anything buried in the earth are extremely favored and bring about the kind of success one has never dared to imagine, even in the wildest dreams. So some kind of pro-mining interpretation. So conclusion is just that it's a very positive reading for this Pluto. Now let's look at Lilith. Interpretation of 24 degree Scorpio. A man swims in rough seas. Generous and courageous character, determined to brave any danger in order to help one's fellow creatures out of a difficult situation. Although no gratitude is expressed by the person rescued, one continues to lend a helping hand to people in need. So much selflessness arouses public esteem and respect. However, one must beware of jealousy, hypocrisy, and slanders. So there you have two connected glyphs. So the Lilith and Moon are connected through the keywords generous and the overall positivity of the readings. Recall the Moon was generous, ambitious, and tolerant. So as with the chart I showed you of my own, I have to wonder if the part of fortune here bestows information on a luck point for this individual. 14 degree Libra. The aurora borealis illuminates a sea of ice as two men ride a sledge drawn by reindeers. Ambitious, inventive, and active character endowed with sharp intellectual capacities. One is deeply interested in literature, the arts, journeys, explorations, and scientific research, particularly in all theories about force, light, cold, and waves. With great leadership abilities, one tactfully boasts friends and colleagues' self-confidence. One is stimulated by obstacles and overcomes them with panache. Life is packed with joy, successes, and honors. So what say you? Very clearly, this is a lucky Sabian symbol. that talks about obstacles being easily overcome with panache, and luck matching thematically with the part of fortune glyph. So I add in the other aspects to show the key, Chiron. Interpretation of 16 Gemini symbolic degree. A man stretches his arms, which have no hands, towards a table dressed with beautiful fruits and nice books. At his feet is a broken pitcher with its wasted water. This degree is a bad omen. One becomes a burden for one's family following an accident caused by someone else's carelessness, for instance a hit-and-run drunken driver, or violent external events such as a war injury or a bomb attack. As always, natal chart must be analyzed. So I would say it's a very negative Chiron key. It doesn't really say anything about the inherent capacities of the given individual, so I don't quite know how to interpret this. But I will say that looking at the pattern of the glyphs in the chart, the thing that stuck out the most is the moon and Lilith being on opposite sides, both having a comparator term generous, and the upside down star pattern I showed you previously. So I haven't really talked much about the mid-space and time chart, but I also did one of those for these two, and I got this. So this is very interesting. Notice the symmetry. You have Pluto opposite the moon. You have this apparent cup or bowl with the different aspects between the planets. You have a 4-planet comparison, and the spacing produces this very interesting symmetry. I don't know if this is significant from the twin flame context, but I think if others post their comparisons, some patterns may emerge here. So again, I was not really naturally inclined to want to take any of this twin flame stuff seriously, but you know, I suppose if you're curious, sometimes the events and circumstances will line up in such a way that forces you to pay attention to certain concepts. I think particularly the relationship between Lilith and the moon could be further analyzed in the charts of others who have twin flame potential combinations to see if there are patterns. I know about Indian or Vedic astrology. I'm not sure how these relationships pan out in that system. This is what I saw for this system, the Western astrology. Just gives you something to think about. Till next time. Okay, and this is sort of like the PS of this video. For the sake of completeness, I did also combine their charts from the love affinity standpoint and got this reading, 34% relationship between hell and heaven, and you can go on and read that there. This is quite different in comparison to the chart I showed you with my own alleged twin flame combination being 100%. And looking at their combined chart, there are other differences. Like you may recall with my own combined chart, the Lilith and the moon were opposites, but here in their combined chart, they both share a positive connotation. Pluto, which is considered a bad malefic planet, is on a good Sabian symbol. Saturn, also a malefic, appears to be aspected in such a way where it's the head of a star. And as I showed you, the Chiron key was quite unlucky. This caused me to speculate, could there be other types of twin flame-like relationships? So let's say you have the classic twin flame, and then you may have the anti-twin flame. I don't know, but I guess the takeaway from all of this is that even though I showed you a really propitious chart with my own twin flame combination, I'm actually not in communication with that person. Whereas this individual who has, which you may say, the anti-twin flame type of chart is in communication with that person's twin flame. So how positive a astrological connection is does not directly correlate with what will manifest in reality between two parties. Also, I didn't yet read you the North Node symbol, which is interesting, so I'll just go ahead and read it to you. 0 degree Taurus. While a winged woman holds with both hands a downwards pointed sword, an athlete grasps a bull by its horns and strikes it down. Quarrelsome, courageous, and clever character. It is necessary to keep wild instincts under control, lest life becomes a battlefield. Opponents are numerous, and although reluctant to wage war, they don't hesitate to fight back in case of aggression. It is through mental strength, philosophy, and diplomacy that the fiercest conflicts can be solved. So looking at this, I sort of feel like this is actually a message to the twin flame companion of this friend of mine. I feel this individual likely has many aggressors and potential opponents. This individual is very courageous and very clever. And I would say potentially impish or quarrelsome too. We all have the issue with our own personal instincts and desires and the importance of keeping those under control unless we lose into the battlefield as a result. Okay, I'm going on too long. Peace.